Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world. As of March this year, over 14,000 sanctions have been imposed on Russian individuals and entities, a five-fold increase since February 2022. Russian diplomats are unwelcome across the civilized world. These sanctions are the global response to the Kremlin's full-scale war against Ukraine. However, experts warn that years of isolation could make Russia, already a pariah state, even more aggressive.
It is important to know that the sanctions imposed on Russia have been highly effective. Sanctions targeting the oil sector were particularly painful for Russia initially. However, countries like India and China, which refused to join the sanctions, came to Russia's aid by purchasing its oil in massive quantities. These payments helped keep the Russian economy afloat. In 2023 and 2024, more and more Russian industries are now facing serious challenges. Sectors like aviation and automotive manufacturing were hit first, and Russia has been unable to recover them.
In the aftermath of the invasion, Western nations froze hundreds of billions in Russian assets, including approximately 300 billion euros from Russia's central bank, most of which is held in the EU. Since the early days of the war, Ukraine and its allies have been working on mechanisms to transfer these frozen funds toward rebuilding Ukrainian cities destroyed by Russian forces. In 2024, the G7 reached an agreement to provide Ukraine with a $50 billion loan to be repaid using proceeds from these frozen assets. Each G7 country will sign individual agreements with Ukraine, and the funds will be disbursed incrementally between late 2024 and the end of 2027.
Ukraine will receive about $50 billion from the G7 and the EU, and these funds should be available this year. We have been defending this decision for 2 years. In the spring of 2022, when the principle of Russia must pay was first voiced, we were told that it was impossible, that Russian frozen assets were protected by sovereign immunity, that there was no legal mechanism in place to use to confiscate these funds. Thousands of hours of work by hundreds of people, and today we have the relevant decisions. Denis Shmyhal, Prime Minister of Ukraine, during the government meeting.
The transfer of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine could also become a condition for establishing a special international tribunal to prosecute Russia for its aggression. Kyiv insists on holding Russia's top military and political leaders accountable. Without proper consequences, reparations, trials and justice, peace in Europe will remain fragile, and revanchist policies in Russia may gain ground, experts argue. Despite Russia's isolation, Putin is desperately trying to project the illusion that the country is not active on the world stage but gaining influence. In October, Kazan hosted the 16th BRICS summit, the first since the bloc's expansion to include Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Ethiopia and Iran in January 2024. Four additional countries, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Malaysia and Syria, have applied to join BRICS. However, several key leaders skipped this year's summit, sending lower-ranking officials instead. As a result, the summit failed to produce any unified political or economic resolutions.
But when we look at the Kazan Declaration, there was no unified position regarding Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine, but there was a reference to national positions of the individual country states. The reference to national positions of individual BRICS members in this declaration demonstrates that Russia's attempts to get any support for the war against Ukraine in the format of BRICS, have failed again. Peter Stano, lead spokesperson for the external affairs of the EU.
The future of Russia's post-war relations with the civilized world will depend on who is in power. Political analysts outline three potential scenarios. If Putin is removed and replaced by someone from his inner circle, Europe and the US are unlikely to engage with the Kremlin. Years of repression have left Russia's opposition almost non-existent, and the exiled opposition has long been fragmented. Even if liberal forces were to come to power, analysts suggest it could take decades to rebuild ties with the West and lift sanctions. Reported by Serhiy Kulyas, Victoria Smirnova, UATV News.